Yo, what is going on, Cowboys Nation? And if you are not subscribed to this channel right now, you are absolutely tripping, because what just came out of Dallas, Cowboys OTAs, is going to have every single fan of this team either jumping out of their seats with excitement or sitting back, nodding their heads, saying, yeah, that's exactly what I needed to hear. We've got defensive fireworks popping off at practice, a first-round pick already making noise against the first-team offense, a rookie linebacker turning heads so fast, the coaching staff is giving him looks with the starters, and Rashan Gary just said something about Caleb Downs that completely changes the conversation about who's going to lead this defense moving forward. If you want to stay on top of every single piece of Cowboys news and analysis, then you need to smash that subscribe button right now, hit the notification bell, and lock in, because we are about to break down everything that happened at OTAs, and I'm going to give you my raw, unfiltered takes on all of it. This isn't your typical boring recap either, because we've got real observations from people who were actually there on the ground watching these practices, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it means for this team heading into training camp and the regular season. So buckle up, because we've got a ton to cover, and I'm not holding anything back today. All right, Cowboys Nation, let's dive right into these Dallas Cowboys OTA observations, because we got some fantastic reports from guys who were actually standing there on the sidelines watching these practices unfold in real time. Huge shout out to Tommy Yarish for his detailed observations from OTAs, and we're also going to look at what Todd Archer reported as well, because I always like to cross-reference what multiple credible reporters are noticing and identifying so we can paint the most complete picture possible of what's actually happening at the Star. The biggest headline coming out of today's practice is that it was a genuinely good day for the defensive unit under Christian Parker and his coaching staff. Cornerback Kobe Bryant had an interception off of Dak Prescott, and that alone is worth celebrating. Cornerback Kalen Carson and linebacker Darren Bland both had pass breakups off of Prescott as well. Now, before anyone starts panicking about Dak throwing interceptions in practice, let me go ahead and shut that conversation down right now, because we're not doing that here. We are absolutely not going to sit here and overanalyze any of his practice interceptions and start asking questions like, is Dak okay, or is something wrong with him? Dak Prescott is an all-pro caliber quarterback. Dak is an MVP-level player when he's healthy and performing at his best. Dak is a potential future Hall of Famer if he can just add a cherry on top of his resume and get that elusive Super Bowl ring, and I'm being completely honest when I say that. So we're not going to waste any time or energy worrying about Dak's practice interceptions, because he's going to be absolutely fine. The only thing we should be doing when we hear about the defense making plays against the offense is saying, good, that's exactly what we want to see. We want to see this defense doing something positive every single day of OTAs, every single day of minicamp, and every single day of training camp. Any day where we don't see the defense being talked about in a positive manner, especially when it pertains to passing situations and coverage scenarios, is a day where I start getting a little bit concerned about whether the defensive overhaul is actually working. Here's the thing that people need to understand about OTA practices, though. They can't go full speed contact. So the run game snaps and observations are kind of like whatever, because you can't really simulate real NFL physicality in that phase. But anytime we hear that somebody did a good job in coverage, anytime a defensive back makes a play on the football, anytime we hear about pressure being generated by the defensive line, that is absolutely welcomed news for a defense that was historically bad last season. Now, this next piece of information is what really got me excited, and I think it should get every Cowboys fan pumped up for what's coming. First-round draft pick Malachi Lawrence had a sack against the first-team offense during the practice session. On top of that, they also saw Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and Rashan Gary all generate pressure at various points versus the first-team offense. My immediate question when I read that report is, which side was this pressure coming off of specifically? Where exactly on the formation was this pressure being generated from? Obviously, if you're talking about Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and those interior defensive linemen, you're going to be looking at the middle of that offensive line, which means Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker, and Tyler Smith all had their hands full trying to deal with that kind of interior pass rush talent. But what I really want to know is, where was Malachi Lawrence specifically lined up on the line of scrimmage? Which side was he rushing from? Who was the offensive tackle that was responsible for blocking him on that sack? That's the granular information I want to know when we're getting these types of practice updates, because the matchup details tell you so much more than just the result. Todd Archer provided some additional detail on that interior pressure, saying that Kenny Clark had a would-be sack on the second play of the team period and later added another pressure. Rookie Malachi Lawrence also forced Prescott off his spot with a good outside pass rush move, which is incredibly encouraging to see from a first-round pick this early in OTAs. The fact that he's already showing a refined outside move that can displace an NFL starting quarterback is exactly the type of developmental trajectory you want to see from your premium draft investment. In addition to the defensive line news, Jan Barnum saw some snaps with the first-team defense at linebacker alongside DeMarvion Overshawn and Eric Kendricks. So Bam Bam Barnum, as I like to call him, seems to be turning some heads out there, at the very least, to the point where the coaching staff is giving him opportunities and looks with the first team just to see how it would look and to evaluate what the speed of the game would be like with those guys running around together. Getting first-team reps during OTAs as a rookie third-round pick is a significant indicator that the coaching staff sees something in you that they want to develop further and potentially accelerate. Now, granted, we are missing some key players, which affects the overall roster configuration, but the fact that Barnum is already getting those opportunities speaks volumes about his readiness. Speaking of missing players, let me address the wide receiver situation, because C.D. Lamb was excused from practice and George Pickens was not in attendance. That meant Ryan Flournoy, Marquise Valdez-Scantling, and Cavonte Turpin were seeing most of the work with the first-team offense at wide receiver. Flournoy had a particularly strong catch in the middle of the field, fighting through some physicality from Kobe Bryant to secure the reception. Now, here's what I want to point out about that play. Kobe Bryant was right there when the catch was made, which means he was in position, he was competing, and he was making the receiver earn that catch. So even though Flournoy gets credit for the strong hands and physicality on the reception, Bryant gets credit for being in the right spot and contesting the catch like a legitimate NFL corner should. That's actually a positive for both players simultaneously. Now, I need to talk about something that concerns me a little bit, and I'm just going to be completely transparent about this. Cornerback Darren Bland is nursing a foot situation. I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head whether Darren Bland already had some kind of cleanup surgery on that foot or not, and whether that's what he's currently rehabbing. But I'm going to tell you right now, I do not like seeing Darren Bland on any injury report whatsoever talking about his feet. If you're mentioning Darren Bland's feet on the injury report, you've got me worried, because we all know his injury history and how devastating foot injuries have been for his career trajectory. You've got me a little bit nervous about this one, and I'm keeping it 100% honest with everyone watching right now. Hopefully it's nothing serious and he's just being smart about managing it during voluntary OTAs, but it's something I'll definitely be monitoring closely going forward. We also have some running back news, as Javonte Williams was not spotted at practice today. With Williams absent, Phil Maffa took the majority of the first-team snaps at running back. But it wasn't just Maffa getting work, as Blue and Malik Davis also got some opportunities with the running back rotation. Cowboys minicamp is coming up next week from June 16th through the 18th, and the only real difference from OTAs is that players have mandatory meetings after those practice sessions. So the intensity and accountability should step up a little bit as we transition from voluntary to mandatory work. Now, let's talk about something that I think is incredibly important, and that's the DeMarvion Overshawn leadership conversation, because Todd Archer reported that Overshawn is working at middle linebacker, he likes the added responsibility, and he vocally wants to be the leader of the defense. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys right now, and some people might not like this take, but I think it needs to be said. That ship may have already sailed for DeMarvion Overshawn as far as being the leader of this defense. And I want to be clear about something. I don't think anybody should be vocally coming out and saying, I want to be the leader of the defense. That is something that needs to happen naturally and organically through your actions, through your preparation, through your consistency, and through your play on the field. When you start trying to force that narrative and declare yourself the leader, it can create uncomfortable dynamics, and we don't want that to be the case at all. We literally just saw what it looked like when leadership was being forced onto particular guys last season and how that affected the locker room dynamics. It didn't go well, and we don't need a repeat of that situation. Here's why I think this conversation is so important and why it connects directly to Caleb Downs. We're about to listen to what Rashan Gary had to say about the first-round safety, and I think his comments paint a very clear picture of where this defense's natural leadership is heading. When asked about his first impressions of Caleb Downs, Rashan Gary said, and I'm quoting directly, "He's a dog man. It's early, but he's a pro's pro." From how he takes notes in the meeting room, from how he asks questions, to how he wants to be on top of every single detail. Having a young guy also trying to bring other guys along, just him being a natural leader, man, he's a great guy, and I just can't wait for him to keep on growing and striving because we're going to need him. That was short, sweet, simple, but incredibly effective, and it echoes exactly what I was just discussing about the leadership dynamics on this defense. Notice the language that Rashan Gary used. He said natural leader. He didn't say Caleb Downs is out here campaigning for the role or telling people he wants to be the guy. Downs is just naturally doing what leaders do. He's taking detailed notes, he's asking the right questions, he's focused on the small details, and he's trying to bring other players along with him, even though he's technically a rookie. That is the kind of organic leadership that builds genuine respect in a locker room, and that's the kind of leadership that players naturally gravitate toward. I think within the next season or two, it's going to become very apparent that this is Caleb Downs' defense. When you watch him handle his business around that facility every single day, when he's making plays and balling out on the field during meaningful games, it's going to be very hard for anyone on this team to look at anybody else other than Caleb Downs and not think that he's the leader of this defensive unit. To be quite frank, I believe that's exactly what he was drafted to be. Not just a safety who makes plays, but a franchise cornerstone who sets the tone and standard for the entire defense. Now, I absolutely love the fact that there are leaders emerging all over the place on this roster. That's completely by design. That's exactly what Brian Schottenheimer wanted when he was constructing this team. That's how he envisioned building his entire roster, not just the defense, with multiple voices and multiple guys who can hold their teammates accountable. That's always positive, and it's something that was severely lacking last season when the leadership structure completely fell apart. But I will say this about the green dot situation, because multiple reporters noted that a number of linebackers are wearing the green dot helmet in practice right now. I suspect we probably won't have a complete definitive answer on who gets that communication responsibility consistently until late in training camp, probably right before the regular season is about to start. Right now, it's essentially a trial run, a dress rehearsal, where the coaching staff is letting different guys take turns wearing the green dot to see who operates the most comfortably and naturally in that role without it hampering their ability to still utilize their individual superpowers on the field. And here's my honest take on the green dot situation. Do I think it really matters all that much in the grand scheme of things? Not really. Not that much, to be completely honest with everyone watching. I think a lot of what we're going to see from this defense is going to be driven by Christian Parker from a schematic perspective, making sure guys are lined up properly and making sure the communication and preparation is taken care of thoroughly before game day ever arrives. If everyone understands their responsibilities, what they're supposed to be doing on every play, the different looks they might see, how they're supposed to adjust based on what the offense presents to them. If everyone is understanding all of that because they're getting taught better in the classroom and getting coached better on the practice field, then that makes the job of whoever wears the green dot significantly more simple. At that point, the green dot guy just calls out the play, and everyone already knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing instead of him having to direct traffic and say, hey, you're supposed to be in this gap and make sure you're looking at this key. So I don't think the green dot debate should be something that fans are obsessing over endlessly. Is it important? Yes, it absolutely is important from a communication standpoint, but it's not going to make or break this defense. For the most part, what I love to see is the fact that the defense had legitimate positivity reported today from multiple credible sources. I've told you guys repeatedly that during OTAs, there's not a whole lot that happens that I'm going to overstate or blow out of proportion because these are voluntary non-contact practices. But we want to see positivity from the defense every single practice without exception. We already know the offense is going to be fine with the talent they have at skill positions and the quarterback play. If the defense is giving our offense legitimate problems day in and day out throughout OTAs and training camp, and that's something that's consistently reported by beat writers and insiders, then that should give us substantially more comfort in a situation where we honestly should have very little comfort right now. Maybe this defense is going to look a lot better, or at minimum a little bit better next season. Hopefully it's a lot better, because a little bit better would just take you from giving up 30 points a game to about 27 points a game, and that's still way too many points for a team with championship aspirations. I also want to mention how exciting it is to see Jan Barnum already getting first-team reps this early in the process. For a third-round rookie to be getting those opportunities alongside established veterans like DeMarvion Overshawn and Eric Kendricks tells you that the coaching staff sees legitimate starter potential in this kid. Training camp is really when we'll start paying serious attention to who's getting reps, with which team, and what the actual depth chart configurations look like, because that's when the pads come on and the real evaluations begin. So there you have it. Cowboys Nation, OTAs are producing exactly the kind of positive defensive reports that we needed to hear after the disaster that was last year's defense. Make sure you drop your thoughts on everything we discussed in the comments section below, because I want to know what you think about the green dot situation, the DeMarvion Overshawn leadership comments, the Caleb Downs praise from Rashan Gary, and whether this defense is actually going to take the massive leap that everyone is hoping for. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video with even more Cowboys news and analysis. Until next time, are you still them boys? Listen, I'm still them boys. How about them Cowboys?